Thank you for joining us for our 18th century tea honoring the founding mothers, grandmothers, daughters, sisters, friends, and foes that lived through the experience of the American Revolution. At your seat, you'll see trading cards with bios of just a few women whose lives were affected by the war. There are well-known women, local women, natives, and slaves. Most women we don't know much about, and what we do know is pieced together from oral histories passed down in families and letters. Lots and lots of letters. Abigail Adams and her husband John were one of the most prolific letter-writing couples during the Revolution. They wrote over 1,100 letters to each other. And the most amazing thing about that is Abby actually saved all of them. One of her most famous letters that she wrote to John is known as the Remember the Ladies letter. March 31st, 1776, Abby was at their farm in Braintree, just outside of Boston, with the kids. John was in Philadelphia at Continental Congress. She wrote, "I long to hear that you have declared independence. And, by the way, in the new code of laws, which I suppose it will be necessary for you to make, I desire you would remember the ladies and be more generous and favorable to them than your ancestors. Do not put such a limited power into the hands of husbands. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could. If particular care and attention is not paid the ladies, we are determined to foment a rebellion, and will not hold ourselves bound by any laws in which we have no voice or representation." This is the most quoted part of the letter, but it's just an excerpt. She writes much, much more. It's a very chatty letter. She gives John her thoughts not just on women's rights, but also her thoughts on General Washington, John Hancock, the Earl of Dunmore, slavery, her hopes for a great growing season, and her concern of a severe sickness that was running rampant. She told him she has this. Can you hear that? Did it go out?
Yeah, it's going in now.
Is it on? She told him she had successfully sewn clothes for the children, or they soon would be naked. She told him she hadn't attempted making saltpeter like he asked her to. Saltpeter is an important ingredient of gunpowder. But after her successful attempt at soap making, she thought she might take a stab at it. She also reported on the condition of their home in Boston. The British Army had evacuated days earlier and had left with many patriots' possessions and vandalized their homes. She noted that some of the officers were honorable men and left money to offset any damages that had occurred. The British regimental doctor who had billeted in their home had left it unharmed, but very dirty. All that information on everyday life during the Revolution was all in one letter, and Abby wrote hundreds of them. All those first-hand accounts, and she kept them all. She kept them all for us. Catherine Littlefield Green was married to General Nathaniel Green, Washington's most trusted lieutenant. She and Martha Washington joined their husbands at encampments whenever they could. They would have parties for the officers to make them less homesick. Caddy Green was beautiful and loved to dance. She was Washington's favorite dance partner. Martha and Caddy became great friends. It would have been wonderful to be able to hear what these two ladies thought of their travels, the war, their lives, and their husbands. Unfortunately, they destroyed most all their letters. Not many first-hand accounts there. Lucy Flucker Knox, wife of General Henry Knox, lived in Boston like Abigail and John did. Lucy and Abigail's letters are very different. Lucy was born into a well-to-do Loyalist family. Her father was the Royal Secretary of Massachusetts. He wasn't happy when Lucy told him she wanted to marry a patriot bookstore owner who had just joined the Rebel Army. He told her if she married a traitor, she'd never see her family again. She was 17, in love, and she married him anyways. When Henry brought the cannons from Ticonderoga to frighten the British out of Boston, he also frightened out Lucy's family. They, like her Loyalist friends, packed their belongings and sailed off with the army. Lucy never saw or heard from them again. Harry wrote to her often, sending her list of supplies that he and Nathaniel Green required. She did her best to scour the city and countryside to find the supplies he asked for. But all Lucy ever asked for was to be able to visit him in camp. She was all alone in Boston. No family, no friends, and a brand new mom to boot. She wanted to be with her husband. She wanted to be where the action was. After all, Caddy was down there throwing parties with Washington and dancing up a storm. She pleaded with him to let her visit in every letter. He responds very gently at first, explaining it's very dangerous where he was. He was in charge of the artillery, after all. And he'd never want her in harm's way. The letters go back and forth, and finally come to a head, with her yelling at him. Well, Nathaniel lets Caddy go, why can't I? He writes back yelling, he doesn't want her there. It's too dangerous. She doesn't listen to him. Those letters are hilarious, and it is just really very sweet too, because they really do love each other so much. So it's a very good read if you'd ever like to read it. Much different than Abby's letters. But while these very public women are handling the war, marriages, and family life as best they can without their husbands, the local women here face different hardships. Being on the edge of the frontier, settlers traditionally depended on their neighbors and families for help and protection. Not every family was for the patriot cause, and when they were forced to take sides, it truly became a civil war. Neighbors became enemies and families were torn apart. Attacks were made by Mohawks and Tories. Anna Warner was one of these women facing these hardships. She was married to George Warner and lived along the West Creek with her children in Cobleskill, now Warnerville. In 1778, their home was burned by Loyalists and Native American forces. In 1781, George and her son Nicholas were captured by a raiding party and taken to Canada. Nicholas escaped, but George was held captive for 11 months. Elizabeth Harper's husband was also captured and taken to Canada. In 1777, Loyalists burned their home in Harpersfield, so they were forced to seek refuge at the Mill Fort. In 1780, her husband was captured during the Sapbush raid. For more than 2 years, she didn't know if he was dead or alive. During the raid of 1780, she helped defend the fort by making cartridges and ammunition for the soldiers. During that same raid, the Niskern family took refuge at the lower fort, now the old stone fort. While Johannes was up in the bell tower keeping watch, Margarita looked after their twin girls, Margareta and Elizabeth, inside the fort. While cannonballs hit the building, rifle shots sounded, and native war cries echoed in the valley, the twin girls played with their belongings, brought with them in little wooden boxes made just for them. You can still see these boxes at the Old Stone Fort Museum. Catherine Merkley was from a family of divided loyalties. She was visiting her friend the day after the 1780 raid and was heading home to tell her family the news of the fighting. She was shot and scalped by a native named Seth Henry. She was in the wrong place at the wrong time and had a 50-50 chance of being on the wrong side. Catherine Hinsman was about 14 years old while her father was on garrison duty at the lower fort. She recalled that Johann Hess had his wife with him while he was stationed there. Both she and her child died during childbirth, and all men and women at the fort attended her funeral. Years later, Catherine could still point to where they were buried. Unfortunately, the grave was unmarked, and no one now knows the location. No one knows the baby's name, and she is only known as Mrs. Hess. No one ever recorded her Christian name. Our local families were not the only ones torn apart during the war. The Revolution divided the Haudenosaunee Confederacy as well. Some nations supported the British and others the Americans. Molly Brant was a respected Wolf Clan matron within the Mohawk Society. Her relationship with Sir William Johnson gave her power in both the Mohawk and British worlds. In 1777, she warned her brother Joseph Brant, a respected war leader, of General Herkimer's plans to march his men to Fort Stanwix to break the siege there. Joseph and his warriors were able to ambush Herkimer at what was to become known as the Battle of Oriskany. 2 kettles together and her husband Hanyeri fought with Herkimer at Oriskany. They were Oneidas who sided with the American cause. Two Kettles famously fired her two pistols fighting the Mohawks until the battle was over, then jumped on her horse to warn the surrounding homes to prepare for incoming wounded. Mary Jemison was a little girl living on the Pennsylvania frontier when she was captured and raised by the Seneca Nation. She recalled later in life the Seneca fighting alongside Brant at Oriskany and the scene of sorrow and distress when they returned to tell of the loss of men. When Mary Jemison was given the chance to return to colonial life, she chose to stay with the Seneca, where she remained until her death. 3 women, all trying to save their homes from a war they didn't choose. Slaves. Phyllis Wheatley was born in Gambia, West Africa. She was captured when she was 8 years old, brought to Boston where she was bought by the Wheatley family. They found her to be exceptionally intelligent, so they educated her in astronomy, geography, history, the Bible, and classic literature. She became a published poet and supported the American Revolution, writing to prominent figures linking the struggle for liberty with the injustice of slavery. Phyllis was an exception to the norm. New York State didn't end slavery until 1827. Here in Schoharie County, we know they were here. They were working alongside farmers, but rarely are they mentioned. When they are, it's usually in wills and estate inventories. One Negro wench named Dean, one Negro wench named Diane, 2 cows, 2 calves, 3 pewter platters, 1 shovel, 6 chairs. You get the idea. Kathy Adams and Pat Holtz have been working to track down the stories of these women for quite a while now. It's a tedious task. Hopefully soon, we'll be able to add more names and stories to the list of ladies to remember. My last lady is the one that's nearest to my heart. She is by far the most known of the Revolutionary women. Okay, so maybe Martha Washington's number 1, but she is definitely number 2. Her story is known to almost every American, and about half of those people don't believe it's true. Elizabeth Griscom Ross Ashburn Claypool. We know her as Betsy Ross. She's given credit for making our first flag. The people who say there's no proof that she made the first flag say so because there's no written proof that she did. They're right. There's no written proof. No written orders from Congress. No account of okaying the design. No bill submitted. No payment made. No card from General Washington saying, "Thanks, Betsy, love the 5-pointed star, great ideas." All we have are stories. Family stories. Handed down from daughter to granddaughter, from generation to generation. Those stories that Betsy's family told are just like our local stories. The stories the Nisker girls told their children. The stories the Warner family passed down about their home being burned. And the story of Catherine Hitzman pointing to where poor Mrs. Hess and her baby were buried. If we say Betsy's family's stories aren't true, are any of our stories true? We are very lucky that Abigail decided to save all those letters. I'm sure she'd be tickled that after 250 years, we are still reading them and learning from them. But whether the stories are written down or just passed down to future generations at family gatherings, it's important that we appreciate all the women who came before us and the sacrifices each generation has made to making our nation a more perfect union. I hope you have a wonderful 250th, and always remember the ladies.